Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the We Have Issues podcast. Today, we will be discussing the recent development that happened last Saturday, the 1st of March, when the U.S. Administration decided to attack Iran and put us into a state of conflict with Iran. We're going to be discussing the ramifications of this, the consequences, and what we think the solutions to this ought to be. With that, I'm Chris.
I'm Carvell.
I'm Matt.
As I said, the U.S. government decided to unilaterally attack Iran in a 3-day special military operation, I believe. Now extended into 6 or 8 weeks, maybe longer. You know, maybe there'll be boots on the ground, maybe not. It's just a whole mess. It seems like we didn't have any sort of idea other than, man, people are talking about the Epstein files so much. We need something to distract them.
I think a lot of this is tragic, very tragic, because I think what a lot of people don't see, we don't see here, particularly here in the U.S., because we have a lot of opinions. We don't see death around the world. We don't see families suffering. We don't see people burying their loved ones. And that is something that Americans really have to come to terms with, because we're comfortable. I feel like we're comfortable here on our side where we're at, because there's not an immediate threat often. Only threat that really comes to us is our money. And, that's just my idea. That's just my opinions. But, nevertheless, we just have to tread very lightly, tread very carefully. And I feel like we need to make calculated moves. So this whole idea of war, with Iran and everybody being dragged into it, we just have to be smart about it, be wise. I mean, I don't have all the intel. I think in this day and age, intel is just different. What a lot of people don't realize is that Israel is actually the one who carried out the attack. The U.S. gathered and gave intelligence for the attack, and then we stamped our name on the attack. So a lot of people think that it was actually the U.S. that carried out the attack that decapitated all the leaders in Iran, but that's actually Israel that did it, and we stamped our name on it. And we have to be really careful to draw ourselves into a long, tedious war, especially when there is a lot of casualties. I know Iran is not Iraq. You think about it, over 1 million people died in the Iraq war. We were over there for decades, and the American people are fatigued. We don't want any more wars. We don't want to be responsible for killing people. We don't want to be responsible for destruction, and we don't want our pockets to get hit. There's a lot that goes with this. And I know that in the past, we've made our mistakes. We've made our mistakes with North Korea. During the Clinton administration, when North Korea was telling us that, oh, don't worry, we're just using this, for energy. And then, boom, they come out with a nuclear bomb. And so, obviously the U.S. doesn't want to make the same mistake, but in trying to understand how to better tackle these tasks, we sometimes drop the ball. And we just got to be really careful with that. That's, that's just kind of my generic thought process. There's a lot to tackle inside of in the details of what's going on during this whole war with Iran right now. But I'm just giving you my thoughts and feelings, and probably the feelings of most Americans.
This is something that I've always been in favor of the U.S. just staying out of the Middle East. as Americans, we don't even have a good grasp of our own history, much less Middle Eastern history. That whole region of the world, very complex, very nuanced, still very tribal and backwards in certain ways that we don't understand, but there has been economic development. And, some of these places that we kind of think of as still being desert is thriving. They do have more modernized economies, and it's a weird mixture that we're not acclimated to the ancient tribalism, very much religiously driven, but still trying to exist in a modern world. And that's why I've just always been in favor. Let's just stay out of it, because it's something that we do not understand. The three of us follow news. We watch it every day, especially trying to prepare for the podcast, since we are semi-involved in a political party. We can't even keep grasp of what all is going on, because America is generally thought of as, yes, it's 50 states, but we are a country. And the Middle East doesn't work that way. Really, the East in general does not work that way. Iran it's very complicated how we've our relationship with them over the years. We've tried to have pro-American regimes. We tried that in the 70s. That got kind of overturned, and we've gone back and forth, but we've never really had a good, stable relationship with Iran. And so that's, that complicates things now. And I think really what's confusing everybody is why suddenly have we made this move? Because honestly, this is a move that has probably needed to be made sometime in the past. I mean, it's always been a fickle relationship. Obama tried it with the JCPOA, basically paying $1.7 billion to settle, and he said to settle an old $400 million debt that was basically owed. And so I think Trump is I think he's riding his high horse with Venezuela. Now, I think that might be why he decided now's the time. I think he wants to go down in history as the president who solved this problem with Iran. But it's so much more complicated than that. Chris, you joked about the Epstein thing, but maybe this is Israel's baby, and we're just kind of roped into it by proxy, since we are in cahoots with Israel, for the lack of a better term. There's even the conspiracy theory that Iran was harboring the Epstein information and all the files and stuff like that. That's why Trump decided to go in. Or if you're Candace Owens, you went in to recover the DNA of Nimrod or some shit like that. So who knows? But I think it's the timing. America does not want wars. Trump ran on being the president of peace, and Israel has had the reputation of Israel has not been good in recent years, but it is at an all-time low right now. Even evangelical support's kind of starting to wane. There's a lot of people starting to question it. So the timing in general is just bad on this.
Obviously, we know that Israel has a lot to do with what's going on in the world today. Right now, here in the U.S., around the world, and Iran, Israel is one of those states where they have their interest, and they're exploiting other countries, particularly the U.S., in accomplishing their interests. And in a sense, you can't get too upset at them, because the rest of the world would do it. We do it. And if anybody had their position, and they would do it as well. But here's the thing. They're in a position right now that they have never been in before in their life, where they have a leader that they understand all you need to do is stroke his ego, and he'll, back you. And not only that, you have a lot of Christian Zionists in America right now that believe that, the Jews are the chosen people, and in Israel, they're trying to bring back a third temple, which is, they got to go back and read the Bible, man. We've seen what Israel was able to do in Gaza. We see what they're able to do abroad, all these bombs and stuff, and we see how they're taking control of our own social media. And so this is the thing, that they're in a particular position where they're like, if we don't strike now, there's no better time than now. So it was earlier this year that the Trump administration, I believe it was jointly with the Israeli government, that they bombed the crap out of Iran. They killed all the scientists, and they said there was no nuclear program. This is what we were told. How is it now that we're saying again, oh, they have weapons of mass destruction? You just killed all the scientists. You just killed they're all their progress. And then you go back in there and you justify yourself saying they have weapons of mass destruction. Obviously, this is news that's being, given to us just to, give us ear candy so they can be justified. Truth be told, they saw an opportunity. That's all it is. It's an opportunity to say, hey, they got an uprising going on. Right now, we have Donald Trump in office, and this Donald Trump, all you got to really do is stroke his ego. Or maybe they have something against some of the Epsteins because, as we mentioned last week, he's an agent. Epstein, a lot of people believe that he was an agent for Israel, and Donald Trump was a good friend. I don't know. There's a lot of conspiracies out there. We kind of mentioned earlier before the show, Hedsberg and Marco Rubio and their little fight that they're allegedly having, where Hegseth is trying to destroy everything. I mean, we saw what happened to the warship, right? I mean, I'm sure Chris will elaborate later, but we saw what happened in the warship, which is it's an international crime. But then when you have Marco Rubio, who's probably the most level-head, saying, we're not going to put troops on the ground. And Hegseth wants to put troops on the ground. But, like Marco Rubio, it's like, hey, this is not what the American people want. We're not going to do this. You guys, we want to understand our objective, and we don't want to go too far. We want to do what's in the American people's interests. And there are some people that just don't care, and they just want to take care of business. I don't have the answer. Maybe we're going to be looking back at this in 6 months, a year later, and we're going to say, hey, this is actually a really good thing that happened. I don't know, but honestly speaking, looking at track records, looking at history, looking at our current state, I can tell you our current government and leadership needs to do more soul searching and understanding what's going to work out for the American people, because I do not trust their judgment right now.
I'm actually more inclined to believe in the conspiracy theory that, Israel saw an opportunity to go after a weakened Iran. I mean, over the course of the past year or two, they've decimated Hamas. They've destroyed Hezbollah. They've gotten the Houthis in Yemen to calm down. Iran just had those student protesters that they just put down. And, because it's in Israel's best interest, if Israel has compromat on Trump, very, very easy to get the American taxpayer and American lives to take the burden from Israel to achieve Israel's goals. It's completely obvious, because if you look at the reasoning that the administration gave for why they attacked Iran, it's, we attacked them because we know that if they knew we were going to attack them, they were going to attack us first. What the hell?
I know, right? Oh my God!
That's like, I hit him because he knew, like, if he knew I was going to hit him, he'd hit me first. Yeah, obviously. Like, you're the aggressor in that situation.
Right.
It's so
ridiculous.
And of course they would do that. Any country would do that. But because they said, the bully's going to hit the victim, you have 170 plus school-age children dead because a school got hit by a missile. You have several Israeli citizens dead because Iran's retaliatory attacks. You have 6 American service members dead because Iran decided that they were going to attack every single U.S. military base in the region.
Don't forget about the 80 dead from the warship.
Yeah, and then you have a literal war crime that America committed. And I don't care what sort of justification you use, it was a war crime. The Dima, the ship that got sunk, was coming off of a military exercise that was hosted by India that the U.S. participated in. We had strong intelligence that that ship had no weapons on it, at least not any missiles or anything like that, functional weaponry. And yes, I get it. You're in a situation of war. You do not want a warship to return to your enemy's arsenal. There's ways to do that other than sending a torpedo and blowing up that ship, which is what we did. But that's not even the war crime part.
And then you know what's crazy about it, Chris, is we had Australians aboard the sub when we launched. We could have just blamed it on them, but we didn't. So we weren't even ashamed of it.
That being a war crime is a little in the air. That's muddled with, the fog of war, whatever. However, what was the war crime and violates the Geneva Convention is after they blew up that ship and it was no longer functional, they refused to render aid to the sailors that were in the waters. That is a clear violation of the Geneva Convention to render aid to your enemies. And luckily, there was a Sri Lankan vessel in the area who was able to pick them up. But like you said, what was it, 80 dead there?
Right.
86.
Yeah, I mean, what the hell? I mean, but this isn't anything new. Before we did our military operation in Venezuela, we'd been shooting fishing boats and killing Venezuelans like it was nothing. This is what America does. America attacks you in the dark and kills you regardless of how aggressive you are towards them. And not only that, our attacks are completely stupid because not only that, but, we have demanded unconditional surrender from Iran. And Iran has refused to negotiate with us. And the reason Iran has refused to negotiate is because we were in the middle of negotiations when we attacked them. Mm-hmm. So this is like, we're going to have our leadership meet with you so you could just not show up and blow up the new leadership? Yeah, America's good at messing things up. America is terrible at cleaning their mess.
You're right, because you really think about it, the name change that we've had from the Secretary of Defense to the Secretary of War, Hegseth, that's actually what he's doing. He's blowing up crap. We don't know, the intel that they're feeding Americans. We don't know if they're telling the truth. You hear all sorts of stories. With the whole warship, them bombing that's Hegseth going forward with that. They're actually creating a way to create war instead of defense.
And don't even get me started on Hegseth himself and the speeches he's made recently, because this is your supposed pro-life party. If you are a pro-life person in America and you still vote Republican, I'm sorry. I cannot respect you, because he keeps saying, we're going to go in and kill them all. We're going to show them with death and destruction what America's warriors can do. And first off, if you have to call yourself a warrior, you are the most smallest dick fucking pussy out there in the fucking world. I am so fucking sorry. Because, you have to be. Because you are just a bully at that point. You are just someone who's there that thinks you are tough shit, and you have to pompously tell everyone you're tough shit. Anyone who has to do that is 100% a pussy.
And not to harp on it too much, but Carvell makes a good point about the name change from Secretary of Defense to Secretary of War. This kind of been the idea behind American foreign policy is we only want to have a strong defense. Now, we've kind of skirted around that with we got to stay overseas so that we can keep an eye on how things are going. The best defense is a good offense kind of thing. But at no point do I believe personally, should we have an office that is dedicated to making war? And I know it's just a name change. I know it's Trump he likes to play these word games and things like that, but it is bad optics in my opinion. And I don't know At first, Hegseth didn't seem that bad to me, but now I'm starting to think he's just a religious zealot who's just roping us into a holy war. I mean, this whole script they're going on that this is a religious war, it is. And that's what's scary is I believe it's a religious war.
That's what Iran used when they went to war with Iraq.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. On all sides, first and foremost, I believe it's a religious war, and that's very scary.
I mean, it is a religious war because our very first act in this was to kill the head of the religion of the state religion of Iran. The supreme leader.
And I think what Trump was thinking is he was going to take out, the head guy in charge and it would crumble from there. But I don't think that Trump realized that's not how they've structured Iran throughout these years. They've been working on this for decades. The leadership, the organization is not just linear. It's spread out now.
Even with all of this stuff happening in Iran, right? We the American people, we still get a say in this war. We still get a say in this plan through our elected representatives, who, in my opinion, have completely let us down with the War Powers Resolution. No surprise from our State of the Union last week. It was completely down to party lines. No real defectors. Obviously, Trump's going to get his $50 billion from the American taxpayer so that we can raise Raytheon stock and kill more brown people. We still don't have a good plan. If you're taking down a country like Iran, you need boots on the ground. And whose boots are they have they decided to do? They're saying, we're not going to use American boots. However, military bases have canceled military exercises in the U.S., so that tells me that troops, as this airs, troops have either been already positioned to invade Iran, or troops are on the boats moving over, in my opinion. Like, it's happening. More Americans are going to die for this. But first, they're trying to rope the Kurds into this plan, which baffles my mind that the Kurds still care to listen to America. In the 90s, during Desert Storm, George Bush Sr. promised them their own state if they rebelled against Saddam. So what do? They rebel against Saddam. America does dick for them. Saddam crushes them and then mustard gases everybody there. During the second Gulf War, when we go in and actually do topple Saddam, we promised the Kurds that we're going to, set them up as well then. What happens, though? The government collapses. ISIS takes over and takes over all of Iraqi Kurdistan and oppresses the people there. And then in Syria, the Kurds in Syria, we say, hey, if you fight against Assad, we'll got your back. So they set up their autonomous Kurdish state in the north, and guess what happens? Turkey just comes and wipes them off the map. America lets it happen. So now you're telling me that they're going to send Iraqi Kurds to go fight in Iran, which, by the way, the Iranian Kurds, they actually support the government because Iran doesn't treat their ethnic minorities that poorly. The people that want to rebel in Iran are the progressives, are the students, are the ones that want to break away from, the religious government. Those people just got wiped out. Like, completely crushed. That rebellion is gone. There's no one to rise up in Iran. All these attacks are going to embolden the Iranian population, and it's going to be a slaughter on both sides.
Chris, I think that's 100% true. I think if you had a chance, you had an opportunity, which the U.S. has done in the past, is that you weaponize the protesters. You give the people in Iran that are protesting, that want to change in the government, you give them a foot up, and then maybe you can attack the leadership, assassinate the supreme leader and president or whatever. But what you don't do is you don't start bombing every city, the girls' schools, bombing everybody. And bombing, warships, bombing whoever that holds the Iranian flag, whatever, because exactly what you said is that's gonna bring them together. You know, this is tragedy that everybody's suffering now, not just the leadership, everyone in the country. And guess what? Those chants, death to America, death to Israel, they're gonna get louder now. I mean, and you think about it too, like the current president of Iran. Don't even get me to pronounce his name because that's impossible. Yeah, I know, right? But the current president right now, he's over here apologizing to all of his neighbors. Like, hey, look, you guys, I'm sorry that we're bombing you guys, but you got to understand our attack is to Israel and the U.S. And there is some sympathy that's given to Iran because I think their neighbors do understand, even though they didn't quite like him in the beginning, but they do understand like his situation. And that's actually not going to work out well for us because what we're trying to do is trying to make Iran be hated by all the neighbors so the neighbors could help us out with this war. But I think when you look at the scope of everything, people have understanding. Their neighbors are saying, we don't like this, it's not okay, but we understand why you're doing it. And this is something that, it's actually going to be a little bit more difficult for us, not only to be liked, but to get people on our side so we can get intelligence, so that we can get people helping out us fight these wars. Why didn't we stick to the status quo? That's one of the things I'm asking, right? And I could be completely wrong with all this, but George Bush Jr., Obama, Biden, and even in the first Trump administration, all said and agreed that we will not allow Iran to have nukes. Got it. I agree with that too. And anytime we saw progress, we shut it down. This time it's much different, right? Like we hit them, below the belt and you want to end it forever, but I don't think it's going to happen like that. Now we see Russia providing intelligence to Iran. Now we see some sympathy from other countries, even North Korea, seeing these things play out. Who knows? Maybe North Korea is going to speed up their capabilities of putting a nuke on a warhead, putting on a missile that can fly like all the way to the middle of the U.S. I don't know. But what I do know is that states right now, what Trump is doing, going to Venezuela, making threats to Greenland, doing whatever he wants to Iran, helping out with Gaza and Israelis and, and all these things that's going along. This is putting everybody on edge.
Carvell kind of set me up for my controversial take. He brought up neighbors and he brought up Russia. We have more in common than Russia has with Iran. Russia is close with Iran. Now, not so much that they have like a compact of, mutual action if somebody attacks one or the other, because I think Russia knows that Iran is crazy. If we could have gotten our heads out of this Cold War space, to quote Obama, the 1980s called and they want their foreign policy back or whatever he said. If we had a better relationship with Russia, we would have had our eyes on Iran. We would have had a partner in keeping tabs on their nuclear capabilities. But we didn't do that because Russia has to always be the ultimate boogeyman. Quite frankly, I'm surprised that Russia hasn't come up more recently. But that's my controversial take on that.
Moving into kind of like the party's view on this, I'd like to take a moment to speak about not part of our party, but the incident with Brian McInnes that happened last week, where he was at the Senate Armed Services Subcommittee hearing. Brian McInnes, he's a U.S. Marine, a veteran. There's no such thing as a former Marine, right? He had attended this subcommittee meeting and interrupted it with a political protest, exercising his free speech, where he basically said that no one wants to die for Israel. And I believe that is very prominent. No one does. I mean, maybe some evangelicals out in the wilderness somewhere, but nobody wants to die for Israel, and this war is done for Israel's sake. Because I cannot see in any way, shape, or form how this benefits America. He was assaulted by officers, brought out, broke his hand. Honestly, like I talked a lot of shit about Hegseth and his warriors. I wish that the Solidarity Party had members as principled as Brian McGinnis was with the Green Party, and who could make these big protests against the government. Because I have the utmost respect for him, for his dedication, and for his defense of the Constitution and the American people that is not being shown by our mercenary army that we currently have.
Well, yeah, Chris, I mean, going back to the War Powers Resolution, that both sides are in support of that. I mean, the neocon, war hawk Republicans want it. The Democrats want it either because they, too, are invested in war, or B, they think it will make Trump look bad down the road. Again, we're seeing it more and more. Third parties starting to make a lot of sense.
The Green Party is, the largest leftist opposition in this country right now. And I don't want to talk too much of them because obviously, there's a lot to disagree with their policy. But, I can respect how principled they are, and other third parties like the Libertarians. They kind of don't really speak up about this, because they've tied themselves to the Trump train. There needs to be that space for us because the main parties are completely not reasonable. They have lost the plot. They only work for special interest groups. I mean, Democrats and Republicans, how many are bankrolled by IPAC, right? What is it, like 96% of Congress is funded by IPAC?
Yeah. Almost every one of them. I think we have a pretty good position on it. I've read our chair Jack Turnan's statement. It's posted on social media. You can read it. It's been in a couple of write-ups. The American Solidarity Party's position on this. We
discuss it in a video right here.
It's not very much unlike how Carter dealt with conflict with Iran, in the 70s, which his was really that botched rescue of the hostages that they had that kind of sunk him. But as far as trying to do everything to keep out of physical conflict, the economic sanctions, the pulling out of any kind of political talks with them, that's kind of the position that we take. And it's not because the American Solidarity Party is anti-war. It's just that is not the first, second, third option that we jump to.
It's kind of interesting, when we talk about, the 70s and Carter and stuff. And, it just got me thinking right now, like a lot of the world's problems, obviously, in the modern day come from the UK, but also the US too as well. What a lot of people, I don't know if they know this, people that are listening to us, the state that Iran is in right now was because of the UK and the US. That's the reason why the Shah came to power. Its reason, especially the oil blockade that Iran had, wouldn't let oil go to the UK freely, and the US intervened too as well. And, they were protesting against Western governments and stuff. So, in a sense, we kind of caused this. We kind of caused this issue. And the people that are listening, what you got to understand is that this is an issue that we're trying to deal with. It's like we set a house on fire, and then you set your neighbor's house on fire while your neighbor's inside. And you're telling your neighbor, this is what you got to do to get rid of the fire, regardless if you're inside of it or not. And this is, for Iranians, they might not think it's quite fair, which it isn't. I know if it was me, I would hate this. I mean, I can't say that everything they've done up until now has been righteous or been good for the world, especially with them funding Hezbollah and them, funding some terrorists and all that stuff. But we do have to understand why they started doing that. We do have to understand why this has been something, because it never really started off as a religious war. But it more so started off with a country wanting to have its own destiny and them being denied. And that is partially our fault. And, America, we have to understand that, the issues we do cause in other countries, and this is one of them.
You guys, we wanted to get the kind of party opinion on this, right? And Matt, you brought up the statement, which was a lovely statement. I mean, we are the anti-war party, only as a last resort, only for just reasons. That's kind of where Americans largely sit. All we've seen for the last, century has been sending Americans to die in foreign lands. For what purpose, right? And we're sick of it. We should not be bringing soldiers back home in coffins. And
By the way, when the coffins did arrive to the U.S., there was nobody there to greet them. Nobody in leadership.
Right.
I just want to point that out.
We've recently had a poll go up on our voting members page on this war. We don't have to speculate on what the party's position is on this war because we actually have the numbers for it. Almost unanimously, we call either for an immediate ceasefire, regardless of the security complications, or U.S. and Israel are the aggressors in this war, and we need to stop any offensive attacks and work towards a lasting peace. There is a very small contingent that wants to progress this war to weaken Iran and its influence in the Middle East. It seems, vast majority, 95% plus. We need to stop this war one way or another. We need to do it through the ballot box. We need to, even up to impeaching the president and getting new leadership in this country so that we can stop this. And I think with the midterms coming up, things aren't going to be as rosy for the Republicans as they think it is.
Yeah, I would have said they would have won up until, when this happened. I think this has hurt them. And I completely disagree with the constituents that in that poll say that this is a just war. But I understand where they're coming from. That I've seen the reports, propaganda of Iranians cheering because, the oppressive dictator's been overthrown. I don't know one way or the other how true all that is. I'm sure there is a minority of people who think that, but I get why people would have that belief that this is a good thing. But I look at things like greater good, and I think this is just going to cost way more than the benefit we're getting from it. And Chris, earlier you said we're the anti-war party, and I think we should clear that up because, we get accused on X and Facebook, of being like extremely liberal and stuff. And it's not that the American Solidarity Party is anti-war. I mean, we are based in Christian ethics and in Christianity in general, and war is a part of that. War is very much in the Bible. It's just, it has to be a just war, and it has to be for reason, and there has to be a net benefit. And I cannot think of any war where there has been a net benefit. I go all the way back to the Revolutionary War. To me, that's the last war that America was involved in that we should have been involved in. Never should have been a civil war. World War II wouldn't have happened without World War I. So that's just how I see it.
And with that, thank you all for listening to us and hearing about this. Please reach out to your representatives to either encourage them to try and stop this war or to express your discontent with them wanting to continue the war. Midterms are coming up. Look to candidates that have an anti-war stance because this Iran conflict is not going to be good for America in the short or long term, and we need to stop that. Also, make sure if you like hearing from us to like, subscribe, hit that bell so that you get the notification that we are having a new video. Every Tuesday, you'll get a new video from us, so look forward to that. And with that, I'm Chris.
I'm Carvell.
I'm Matt.
And thank you again for listening. God bless. Have a good one.